Honestly have no idea how it works. I don't really know the benefits. I couldn't tell you like why it's better. I am probably just being like subject to advertising or whatever, but for some reason something came over me and I wanted Dyson Airwrap. Can't explain it. It's just the magic of advertising. Probably Google working
I
its magic.
I understand,
Thank
but
you.
at the same time, probably not the person to be able to convince you for or against. Because if you can tell, I wear so much makeup and I do so much to my
You have the luxury of
hair.
looking beautiful naturally. I am live here to chat about TV this week and not here to chat about all of the crap that Google is convincing me that I need to buy. This is what I get for signing my life away to Google. Um, for some reason, I like you just like wake up one morning with a strange impulse. I woke up and I was like, you know what I need? That hair tool that I don't know how to use. Okay, we're here to chat about TV women and not performative femininity. And as such, we're going to be discussing Supergirl approaching its end. Stargirl went through its season finale, but not its series finale. They were very clear that there's more coming in season 3, which is very exciting. We're going to be chatting about Maid, which Kate has started, and I have not, so I'm very excited to hear about that. And other TV women this week, such as some assorted reality shows that I think we should just very, very briefly touch on towards the end of tonight's broadcast. I want to hear from you guys in the chat what you've been watching this week. But more than that, I want to hear from Kate the news from this week. Take it away, Kate.
Okay, so this week I bring to you a couple new things are coming out in November. So Amazon Prime has the Wheel of Time series coming out on November 19th.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a little research. It's going to cover mainly book one, but there will be a good portion of book two and three sprinkled in. So
Okay.
I know the next three books I'm reading it are. Um, and then this upcoming Friday, Spencer comes out. So we're both
Yes.
very excited to see Spencer.
So excited.
And then
That's the
on
other thing
November
Google's been
20th,
trying to convince me about. It's been trying to convince me I wanted to need that I want to see Spencer. No convincing is necessary there. Like you've
you're
already
like,
sold me. Take my money.
you're like, I appreciate it, I really do, but you don't have to work this hard.
Right.
Um, Also in November, uh, on the 24th, Hawkeye is going to premiere its first two episodes, and then it's going to release consistent episodes until the 22nd of December.
Mm-hmm.
Very excited about that. And then today I found out something interesting that I know you'll be excited about. Anya Taylor-Joy is starring in a new movie that's filming in Savannah, Georgia called The Menu, and it's a dark comedy thriller.
Everything about what you just said brings me joy. Every single you could parse that sentence into like 3 word splices and all of it brings me joy. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Joy, pun intended, 100% intended.
Yes. Yes, the only way to make it better, to hit your niche even better, is to make it like a period drama, and then it was written strictly for you.
Absolutely.
And that's all I have for this week for the news.
I'm excited about all of that. My cat just jumped up here, so clearly he's excited as well to be up on the table. Carrie says hi here for Stargirl and Supergirl. Hi, Carrie. Welcome. We are very excited to be talking about Stargirl and Supergirl. Also, everybody say hi to my beautiful kitty. Oh, hi, Bishop.
Hi, Vishal.
He's so pleased to be cuddled like that. And I'm very excited to talk about Stargirl and Supergirl. I'm not sure if I said that while wrestling my cat. He also asks, am I more excited about Spencer than the Eternals? And that's a great question. I think I'm more excited to see Spencer the second it comes out than I was to see Eternals the second it comes out. I don't know why. I think it's just the nature of Marvel films being, I don't want to say predictable because Marvel is not always predictable, but there is a bit of formulaicness to it. I'm not attached to this idea of seeing a Marvel film the second it comes out. I feel like I can be spoiled on what happens in a Marvel film, and it's not necessarily going to take the joy and the excitement of watching it out of me because I'm usually there for the I guess kind of the vibes, the feel of things, and not necessarily the intelligence of the plot. I'm not trying to sound like some sort of fake film critic who's like the plot is not like what I don't need to see a Marvel movie the second it comes out. The Eternals really tempted me, and I actually did look up tickets to see it the weekend it came out because of Angelina Jolie, and I'm like obsessed with her, and that doesn't have to do with the plot, the character, the franchise, literally anything other than the fact that I'm obsessed with Angelina Jolie, have been forever. It's embarrassing, but such is life. However, there's like one movie theater where I really like to see movies because it's like cushy and nice and just like really good vibes. And they were like sold out. And then I checked it again for this weekend, and they were also sold out for everything except like the back row at like 9:30, and grandma's got to go to bed. So like still haven't seen the Eternals. I know, tragic. Whereas for Spencer, I kind of want to see it like the second it comes out, which sounds dumb because it's like, what are they going to do? Have spoilers of real life? Like, no. It's like, I just feel like the way it's going to be portrayed, the lines, the performance, whatever, I want to be on the kind of initial end of the hype. I don't know how else to say this. Kate, do you want to see Spencer the second it comes out?
I mean, so all three of these movies that have come out are coming out in recent times. So I really still want to see Dune. Haven't had a chance to go see it. I think Eternals did come out like last weekend. I wanted to see it because to me it kind of feels like Greek gods meets Marvels, which is an interesting idea to me. And then I really do want to see Spencer. And I will say, out of the three of those, like Spencer, I kind of do want to see as soon as it comes out, if I could. The next, I think I'd probably say is Dune, actually, because I read the book, and like the things people are already saying about it, I'm like, I just wanted to witness it for myself before you gave me the impression that I'm supposed to have about this adaptation. Dang it.
I wanted to see Dune until Dune came out and everybody started talking about it. And also, Steph in the chat says, OMG, cat emoji. Sorry, but I'm a hashtag cat lady. I am such a cat lady as well, Steph. And I happen to have a beautiful little kitty with a bad attitude. So really, really thrilled about that. So when Dune came out, like obviously I knew Zendaya isn't in it very much, and she's the one thing that I wanted to see. So like whatever. But whenever I see people reference the plot, like Kate, I don't know what it is, but literally nothing about this movie other than Zendaya sounds good to me, but everybody likes it. Like what's going on?
So people, I'm not going to pass judgment because I truly have tried to avoid a lot of the discussion, but some of it I haven't been able to miss. A lot of people were really upset that she was only in it for 7 minutes. If you had read the book at all and you understood that they were splitting it in half, you would know that 7 minutes was a generous amount of time for her to be in the first half. The other thing I've seen a lot of is like this confusion about whether we're supposed to like Timothy Chalamet's character. That's kind of like the whole point of the book, is like it's a warning against charismatic leaders, is what the whole entire concept of Dune really is. So half of the people I've seen talk about Paul, which is his character, they're talking like gushing because it's Timothy Chalamet. And everybody's like, ooh, Timothy Chalamet. I'm like, okay, cool, but you're kind of missing the point. And I think because as a person that's read the book, I think it'll probably be a better adaptation split in half because it's a massive story. But I think to sell the concept in half, it might be detrimental to people that only see the adaptation.
I think anything that's trying to sell me on the idea of Timothy Chalamet being like an adult has already lost me, but I respect that that's just because I'm ancient. When it comes to like morally gray characters, corrupt characters, or I'm going to use a line from a podcast, characters where their charisma, or leaders, I guess, leaders where their charisma exceeds their character, I find that very fascinating. I find that very interesting. I like the kind of, well, I like unlikable women, and I am in. It is interesting just to hear about like difficult or somewhat bad people in general. The setting of Dune seems incredibly boring to me, but that's probably a me problem. I'll watch it eventually. So to answer the question, I guess I'm more excited about Spencer than the Eternals, but I'm going to see all of the above, eventually.
Yeah, same.
Well, let's jump into Stargirl and Supergirl. And let's just go ahead and start with Supergirl because the show is about to end. And if I understand correctly, it's going to end and then there will still be Supergirl in the crossover. So let me just start by saying the way this show is, I know. And I could be kind of like messing up. Like there might be some sort of timeline weirdness going on, but essentially the last two episodes of Supergirl, as I understand it, are occurring next week in a 2-hour series finale, and then I think they'll still have some Supergirl characters crossing over in the crossover. How would you feel like? How do we feel about shows that have ended still supplying superheroes and superheroines in the crossover? Because obviously the same thing's going on with Arrow.
So, I mean, we've had extensive conversations about how certain TV shows in the Arrowverse sacrifice their own stories and their line for the benefit of their specific one singular show. And I don't love it. I don't love that they continue to do this. But on the flip side, it also, in this particular instance, is going to bring back holistic progeny in a way that is closest to what we're ever going to get off of the spinoff that we were promised that we're never going to get. So mixed feelings about it this time, but only because we're getting Mia. Whereas, like, I saw the poster for the crossover, and I can see Alex in the background. I'm like, what is she doing here? I thought Supergirl was going to be done by then.
I think
What's
Supergirl,
happening?
this is just like wild speculation based on like me, piecing together like tweets and what people have said or whatever. But I'm guessing Supergirl is going to like fully leave this earth at the end of her, tenure on the show. She's going to like go off into Alienville to like be an alien or like something like that, maybe somewhat giving up her life for humanity. But her sister, Alex, will remain. And her sister has got engaged. She's adopted a kid. Like she's got like a whole life, like a whole happily ever after planned out. And for context with Supergirl, the last human love interest, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, the last guy that was sort of a love interest for her, it was a very short-lived love interest, but he remained on the show as a character and as a friend, and they truly stopped teasing him as a romantic interest. His name was William. And they killed him. So even if people were thinking they pull him back around as, her like happily ever after human, she has no human that she's attached to. There is still the alien Mon-El, who I think is like living out a timeline elsewhere and like has a wife and kids, but like I don't know if that's getting I don't know what the situation is. I never liked him to begin with, and I still don't, but that's her real life husband. So like shout out CW curse, I guess. A lot of people think that they're going to pull him back in or refer to in some way in the future. She ends up with him. Carrie in the chat says, what do you think Supergirl has to do for a successful finale? It has to be about more than just saving the day, right? That is a good question. And that's something I've kind of been thinking through from the sense of like, what would it take for the finale to get a pretty good score for me? And as an example, probably a controversial example, I guess, but the show's coming back, so how controversial could it be? The Dexter finale, widely cited as one of the worst ever in television. When you're talking about, worst finales ever, you'll frequently hear How I Met Your Mother, which I never watched, Game of Thrones, where like the entire franchise was essentially erased by the last season. Never watched it, but that's, word on the street says. And then Dexter, which I did watch, I did care about, was very interesting to me, fascinating. And the whole final season was bad, but the finale was good. And what that does to me is it sets up this expectation where a whole final season can be bad, medium, only okay. And the finale can be good to me. Okay. So with Arrow, we also had a similar situation. The whole final season, a lot of us, myself, I think I'll say Kate included, were kind of along the ride just saying like Felicity's not here. Even aside from that, a lot of this is somewhat mediocre. Some was okay. Some was okay. Props to Beth. Credit where credit's due. But like a whole lot of this is mediocre, and we're really just here for the actual finale. I got what I came for, and I'm out the door. With Supergirl, what did I come for that would make me satisfied? Other than her and Lena, which I know won't happen, I've made my peace with it. I won't shut up about it, but I've made my peace with it. There is a like little girl in the show right now. It's the little girl that her sister has adopted, and shocker, the little girl is kidnapped by Lex Luthor leading into the finale. So when we're talking, and the little girl also has like she's incredibly OP. Like she just basically has like every kind of superpower you can think of, and also she can absorb any superpower, and also she can apparently become a totem, which is a whole thing. Just like she's super OP. The writers clearly were like, this is okay. Like this is the one we're gonna make OP, and it's like it's fine because she's cute. Whatever. I would say that if they set it up to where Supergirl saves Esme, who I'm not particularly attached to, but I recognize as like a very like representative character in the storyline. She represents all girls and she represents all here. Like it's that kind of vibe. If Supergirl saves her, she, in a figurative sense, does more than just save the day because she saved, humanity. And she, in a literal sense, did more than save the day because she saved a hero who is arguably more OP than she is. So I would say if they have a really good, convincing Supergirl saves her, and it's not like Supergirl and all friends save her, but it's truly like there's a really good moment where Supergirl is saving this girl from Lex Luthor, that could be the good A plot, and I think that's the direction they're going. But I cannot stress enough how much it has to be Supergirl who does it. This cannot be this cannot be that they bring Alex, the girl's mom, now in to do it. Love her, love the adoption, great, 10 out of 10. That would not be the Supergirl finale. That's a cool wrap up to Alex's story. It cannot be all this Supergirl and Friends stuff that they've had this entire time. It can't be some twist where humanity saves it. None of that. Like it would have to be an extremely Supergirl focused storyline. And I would say that has to be the case overall. In terms of her ending, I've referenced kind of begrudgingly the fact that I think she's going to leave. That's word on the street, but also because I think they have set it up to where she's like so ready to sacrifice it all. And I just want something that's not just self-sacrifice, because it's not presently, but at the time that Supergirl came out, it was the first like female-led superhero show in a really long time. Okay, like if you want to talk exceptions, hit me up in the comments. Overall, this was the one. Supergirl was the one on the posters next to Grant Gustin and Stephen Amell, and they were gonna do this whole like Brandon Routh, like whatever thing, spent like the whole thing, and then you had Melissa. That's it. I am not super big on her storyline being self-sacrificing because she is female and men do not always have to. And before anybody wants to say, oh, but Oliver Queen sacrificed everything, number one, not a huge fan of that either. Number two, that fits his storyline specifically because he has a lot of baggage and bad things he did, and he had to go through redemption. Supergirl does not. She does not. Her bad thing that she did is have terrible taste in men. Other than that, she doesn't really truly have like this whole big bad baggage that she has to like pay for and serve retribution for. So I don't see why her storyline needs to end in massive self-sacrifice. I don't need that to be a huge plot point. I understand it will be a somewhat of a plot point, but I'd rather that be couched in like bravery and her willing to risk her life rather than sacrifice and her willing to sacrifice her life. Sacrifice is meaningful in a context where somebody needs to sacrifice as retribution. Okay, I'm going to hop off my soapbox. I think I talked for 15 minutes straight. Kate, what do you think Supergirl needs to do to have a satisfying finale as somewhat of an outsider?
Yeah, I haven't like actively watched in several seasons. I'm somewhat aware of what's going on. It's almost one of those things that because I know that a lot of the fans want her to end up with Lena, but there is a lot of me that wants to say if we didn't get it in the show, it's just kind of a slap in the face to get it in the finale. So please don't do that to people. If anything, leave Lena alone so that way her existence is kind of like Alex's existence, where she can pop up in other shows when she needs to, because at least like as much of an open-ended ending as that is, it's still always a treat to see people come back. I think I do agree though, because when we watched Arrow, I had a lot of issues with the concept that he had to die, since like a lot of his arc was actually like fighting to live. Like it was still a topic that they were talking about consistently all the way through like season 7 of like fight to live, not fight to die. Mm-hmm. And then in the very end, what he had to do was sacrifice his life. It's a little cheap of a choice, but that's the choice they made. It's fine. But at least with him, it did make sense in the concept of he has to pay for his sins. Mm-hmm. He was a kind of just a crappy guy before the island, and then after the island, he did kill people. In this twisted concept of vengeance, and when he was on the island, he was also killing people. So I understand on at least like an equilibrium level why he had to die. Mm-hmm. She, from what I understand, has never killed anybody. Like you said, has had some questionable taste in men. Can go a little too hard on the hope theme, and that's about it. Like, that she doesn't really have any big sins to pay for, other than like small little things that everybody does on accident, on occasion. Like, what she needs is to it needs to solidify that Superman and Supergirl, but specifically in her story, Supergirl, kind of symbolizes this like faith in humanity and this like belief that protecting others and protecting humanity is one of the greatest things you can do. And so her sacrificing her choice, or maybe her perfect happiness, to save humanity, to save the future of humanity, to save this little girl, that's her final destination, which she's kind of always been at. I think the issue really is Supergirl is a fun character, but it's not like she has a massive arc compared to redemption type characters, mm-hmm. or heroes. So it's not necessarily as big of a thematic ending that she has to have. It just has to kind of justify her existence and give her a reason that's not overly self-sacrificing or detrimental to her character or her memory of her character, in order for the actress to leave. So mm-hmm. that's kind of the balancing act that I understand that they're going to have to go through.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you brought up a good point about her arc. It's very difficult, I think, to write an arc, an easily accessible arc across multiple seasons of a character developing when they already started as good. And that's why you have shows, like like Suits or just pretty much any like I guess less teen and more adulty show. You'll often have characters start off as like a little assholey or a little, like the lead from The Good Place or whatever, where they're not really that good, and they may become heroic, or they may become particularly good at a certain thing, or they may develop in some way or go through particularly hard times and have to become better at it, or get broken down, whatever the case may be. But when somebody starts good, as she did, and they will end good, because you're not turning Supergirl into a villain. They did not do that. They would not do that. I would absolutely watch it, but that's just not the path they're going. You have to have quite a nuanced arc, and I think that becomes difficult. And she has her learning journeys throughout this, but she herself does not change very much, and I'm okay with that. But it does make wrapping up her story a little difficult, because you can't just pull a Star Wars and have the son of Han and Leia suddenly become good and sacrifice himself for the last Skywalker, or whatever the case may be. If you want to fight with me about Star Wars, hit me up in the comments. Happy to talk. But that is a redemption story, right? Here, there's nothing to redeem, and she already knew her powers, well into the there's not a discovery of this, there's not a coming of age, there's just a lot of like very classic tropey storylines that this is not. So the wrap up becomes what is next for her. Carrie's comment is interesting in that context. He says, for me, the Supergirl finale needs to end with Kara going on her own journey, wherever that takes her. That, I think, is interesting. This idea that she is getting ready to go on a journey, but these past few seasons have not really been the journey copyright TM for her. This is not the capital T, capital J, the journey. This is her saving the world for a while, looking after, the city and the world, and developing a team and doing all of this, but the best is yet to come for her. She's just now entering, her life. I think that would be an interesting take on this. It is I'm always going to be concerned with the romance, not just on a female led show. It is associated very often with this like independent loner ending, which you'll see for both guys and girls. Supernatural would be an example of this, where you have this sort of demi independent ending where they don't have a romantic happily ever after with anyone. You'll see, I think Veronica Mars, the latest season, was an example of this. I didn't actually watch it, but the streets say she doesn't end up with the love of her life. So because she's supposed to be a quote unquote independent woman. I often struggle with endings like that. I think they're often a cop out, because they are often an excuse to not get a particular romantic relationship together, because at the time that the writers actually get to the point of getting them together, they realize it's too late. They didn't give them the romantic development along the way that everybody wanted, and now it would be rushed. So they're like, it'd be rushed, that's your fault. I think that's often the case. In this case, I would be okay with her having a truly like independent, happily ever after, go off and save a whole other universe that's not Earth. I think that would be a good path for her. Kate, talk to me about Maid. Should I watch it? And if so, why?
Okay. So I have not watched all of it yet. In fact, I'm not even halfway through. I don't know exactly where I am though. But so far, it's not a happy show by any means, but it's a very well acted show. The actress's name has left me, but it's like the lead is Margaret Qualley, and her mother is a famous actress, Andy. It doesn't matter. But her mother is also plays her mother in the show, which adds a
Okay.
like a really convincing chemistry between them, even in just what I've seen so far. But essentially, it follows a young mother who is in a emotionally and edging on to physically abusive relationship. And in the first sequence, she leaves that man um, out with not much money, and she just kind of takes her daughter and leaves um, in search of some place that she can make money and take care of her own daughter. Um, she finds a job as a maid, and it kind of follows that journey for her. And from what I understand, like how it's going to go forward, is it's going to involve a little bit of legal battle. Also, her hopefully trying to find like work to a position where she can support her daughter and go to college, which was an opportunity that she missed when she first got pregnant.
Hmm. I like that. I think I had seen like some headline or again probably a tweet. I'm an embarrassment. That's how I get my news about there being like a mother daughter like actress whatever situation on Maid, but I hadn't quite made that connection that that was actually with the lead. That's really interesting. I
Andy McDowell.
and what? Andy McDowell? Is that
Andy McDowell is the mother. Yes.
gotcha. I definitely do want to watch it.
Uh, I mean, when I was first seeing it, what really convinced me to fully watch it was the soundtrack. So one of my favorite modern artists right now is Shannon Van Etten. Like 8 or 9 songs of hers are in this show.
Oh wow.
One of the Haim sisters is like one of the theme composers. It's an excellent soundtrack. When the acting is phenomenal. Um, the the lead actress is really is carrying it very well.
I am a sucker for a good soundtrack, so that will get me in.
It's a good quality.
Speaking of soundtrack, I don't usually talk about music, but I've been obsessed with a particular album. It's I don't I am a fan of this band. I don't know how they pronounce their name. I think they might pronounce it churches, but in place of the U, it's a V. Are you familiar?
Yes.
Okay. The album they have that's based on horror movies, which is very timely right now because we just passed Halloween. It's called Scream Violence or Screen Violence. So good. And then they released a director's cut that has 3 more songs, and those are like the 3 best songs on it. Anyways, just thought I'd mention.
Yes. I am familiar with that album. I don't remember all the songs on it. It's been a while since I listened to it, but from what I remember, I liked it.
So good. They released the director's cut 3 additional songs just in time for Halloween. 10 out of 10. I put it on the Halloween playlist and then proceeded to defend every single song on the Halloween playlist except that because church's songs do not require a defense. All
That's a lie.
right.
You did, actually.
Did I defend the church's?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
well,
you did.
I don't remember that, so it didn't happen. Okay, let's do a really quick rundown of like what you missed on reality TV that you don't watch. But I'm gonna start.
Okay.
I'm gonna start wholesome. I'm gonna start with Great British Bake Off. So the Great British Bake Off's currently airing. So this isn't a spoiler because I don't know how it ends. They're uploading episodes to Netflix. I think like the week after it airs on BBC, or I don't know what the situation is. However, can I just say this has been one of the most interesting seasons so far, where they have 2 contestants on this show who are like wildly overqualified. Like both of them might be as good or better than the judges. Truly. I'm not convinced that they're home bakers. They're very charming. I have nothing against them. One is a German gentleman, one is an Italian gentleman. They are incredible and they are very clearly of a caliber above what we've seen on this show before. And you know that's true because otherwise I would not be praising men. Also, they have a vegan baker who was on the show and she was lovely. She was also like very obviously young and Gen Z and didn't know how to, you know, converse in a very kind of like adult, almost grandmother-esque environment, and it was very sweet. Highly recommend catching up on this show. It's been wonderful. This is not the season where the judges are the entertainment here. This is 100% the contestant show. Secondly, Dancing with the Stars. I started watching Dancing with the Stars fairly recently, actually. I'm not like an OG stan of this show, but I was watching this season in particular because JoJo Siwa, yes, JoJo Siwa is on this season, and she is the first dancer on this show who has a same-sex partner. They're doing an incredible job. They're the ones that you're seeing right now on screen. I am absolutely entranced watching them, but I've also kind of got caught up in a couple other dancers' storylines. There is this like NBA player who initially, when he came on, no offense, was like truly terrible at dancing. Like really had like it was a very he was very awkward and could not do even the most basic ballroom forms, and has like excelled and is incredible now over the course of the last few weeks. Like a true like in the case of like JoJo and a lot of these contestants, quite frankly, they all had like dance lessons as a child. Like they may be an actor or an actress or whatever first and foremost, but like they've had dance training in the same way that they've had like martial arts training or whatever. Like you don't just like neglect any particular area of the art. For him, he was like he really convincingly seemed to come in without much and has like progressed. So that's been really cool to see. I recommend this season of Dancing with the Stars, unless JoJo Siwa does not win, and then I do not recommend this season of Dancing with the Stars. Lastly, Michelle's season of The Bachelorette is airing right now. We are pretty early on in it, so if you decide to lower your standards and watch it, there's not much to catch up on at this point. And who you're seeing right now on screen is not one of the top 4 that I predicted. In full, like, just, honesty and disclosure, the number one person who I picked, and I tweeted it, so I can't exactly take it back, is a very obvious villain on this season. Clearly, my picker is broken. He is terrible, and he has already gone home. And I think of the other guys I picked, 2 have also gone home. So there's just one left. And I think the one who's left in my top 4 that I picked is also going to be a late season villain. So truly, I did terrible in every possible way in picking guys for this show. However, making up for it, the guy that you see on screen, he's not going to make it that far either. His name is Rodney. He got one of the first one-on-one dates. I think he got like the second one-on-one date, and he's like had some group dates or whatever. He refers to himself as kind of the underdog. When you see him in a lineup of these men, like he seems like he's probably would be the last one picked to stunt double for like a Marvel hero type of situation. But he and her had such convincing, sweet chemistry on this date, Kate. They made each other laugh. They spoke like normal, real human beings. And like watching it, I was like, I know this relationship is not going to work out. Like, I know he'll get cut in a couple weeks, whatever. Because looking at them, they seem like a really normal, regular couple who would like get married in real life. Like, they look like a couple who would get married, live in Minnesota, have a wonderful life. She would eventually become principal at the school. I don't know what he does, but he'd eventually, whatever. Like they seem like really normal, regular people with like normal chemistry that like was funny and sweet and not overblown into this like romantic love bomb for the sake of reality TV. So he's not going to last. But if you want to watch a like truly very sweet date that seemed very normal, this one is a good example. The rest of them, not always like that. That's what you missed on reality TV this week.
That's so sad.
The bar's on the floor. Okay. So I know we're down to 1.5 brain cells. So heal our brains, bring us back into the land of the intellectuals. What did you read this week, Kate?
So I read The Exiles by Christina Baker Klein. which follows, it mainly follows three different women that kind of fall prey to the prisoner transportation to Australia in the 1870s, 1890s, maybe, I don't remember, 1840s. Um, and it's a really good book. It was shocking, it was upsetting, it was sad, but it was really well written. Um, and it really had me rooting for all three of these women. Um, then I read Mary Jane by Jessica Anyo. Wow, okay, yeah. Uh, that one is like a coming of age story set in the 70s of this girl who nannies this young child and ends up actually kind of hanging around two famous rock stars because the parents of the girl she's nannying, one of them is a psychiatrist, or yeah, and he's like helping one of the rock stars. So it's kind of this weird, like, she kind of grew up in a very conservative environment, so it's this exposure, this culture shock of what other people are actually like. It was really interesting, although it was very poorly marketed because it was sold as something like much different than what it was. I was like, this is fine, it's just not what I was expecting. um, then I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo
Oh my God, I
by
keep hearing
Cammien
about that.
Ray. It was good. It was definitely one of those. It's a story that um, basically it's told through this perspective of this woman in her late like 70s or 80s is giving these interviews to this woman who is an up and coming journalist. And she's telling the history of her seven husbands and how, as a famous Hollywood actress, a lot of what she's famous for is how many relationships, disastrous relationships she had. And it was a really interesting story following a very like anti-hero character. She wasn't a good person 90% of the time. She wasn't a bad person per se, but she wasn't a great person either. And then you find out that there's a connection between her and the journalist that kind of makes your stomach turn. But you have like you kind of feel sympathy for the lady. It's a really interesting story. And then there's the whole twist about that none of the seven husbands were the love of her life, but you figure out who the love of her life was, and that's really interesting. I like that book a lot. Um, and then I am currently reading The Secret History by Donna Tratt, which follows six college students, and four of them accidentally kill somebody. A fifth one finds out and can't keep his mouth shut, and so then another murder takes place.
Sounds fabulous. Would watch.
It's good. It's very pretentious,
Oh,
but it's pretty good still. It's very long. It's a very long book. It's like 22. I don't know. It's very long, but it's pretty good so far.
Bishop just tried to push my chair in a circle. So I have not read a new book this week or in the last 2 weeks. However, there was a book I was telling you about called The Therapist, which is like a psychological thriller type of situation. I've read a bunch of books by this author, always great. Anyways, there was there were hints. There were very slight hints. And when I say slight, I mean you have to be like an overthinker like me to see it. But there were hints of this romance, which is A, shocking, and B, because this is like a psychological thriller. None of her books are really romances. And if they appear to be, someone ends up being like a killer, right? B, it wasn't the correct romance because technically the lead is engaged to a guy who seems perfectly lovely until the latter half of the book, or the latter like third even of the book, where like stuff starts to get revealed. So all I want to say on the record, so I can be proven wrong when I use my two eyes and read further, is that I thought from the beginning, there were hints of romance between her and the investigator. And let me caveat this by the same thing that I said several weeks ago, which is I don't like affair storylines. There was a movie we watched on Netflix that involved something of an affair storyline, and that was like the one thing I didn't really care for about it. I find that to be kind of like it's just kind of like. There's a whole TV show that is wildly popular right now that I'm refusing to watch. No fault to those who enjoy it because I find it has way too much of kind of like a cringy, awkward affairness to it. Okay. However, in this book, she has a significant other, but he's like massively lying to her about like a whole bunch of things. He might be terrible. There were hints early on that there could be slight romantic vibes between her and this like investigator. One of these two men has to be bad. Like I know the writer is writing well enough to know either her fiance is bad and the investigator is good, and like there's going to be some sort of romantic situation with her and the investigator, or the investigator's good and all of this dirt that's being dug up on her fiance is like wildly out of context and he's either not bad or it wasn't as bad as it's looking like and he's actually good, whatever. And it's like right at the point of the book where you don't know yet. And I'm putting my money on her fiance being bad and the investigator being good, and I will report back to you on which one it is.
Just based purely on what I know about storylines, I will say that I agree with you. I think that the fiance is bad and that the investigator could also be bad, but at least the fiance is bad.
That's a good point. It could be both. This author would do that. I just think the investigator is good. They talk about his hands being warm. That was like what I'm talking about when I'm saying like you really had to reach early in the book to like feel like there could be some sort of romantic thing. Like they referred to his handshake as like a warm handshake. And it just seems like the type of thing that you would say if you're setting up for a character being good. And there were no like romantic moments like gazing into each other's eyes or like any sort of like none of that. Like they have very very brief conversations up until this point and all of them are like completely non-romantic, she's in love with her fiance, like it's a whole thing. But like I just saw these little things that were just like little flag, little antenna kept going up, and we're just now getting to the point where we're finding out her fiance's bad and the investigator is more presently in this storyline. And I'm like, I'm either being led astray or this is a romance, and I'm choosing to believe this is a romance. The narrator, she was being led astray.
Well, I'm sorry because my meter's broken because as soon as you said his hands are warm and that being romantic, my brain immediately switched to the 2005 Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
Your hands are cold.
Yes. And the hand grasp. Right?
Yes.
Listen, I need heavy deprogramming before I will not see this as romantic. So here we are. It's at 9:00. We will report back next week, at which point I will be reporting to you whether the Supergirl finale did end in a satisfying way or not, amongst other things we will have watched. And maybe we'll even skip the Bachelorette update next week. Maybe. Fingers crossed. I'll talk to y'all next week. Same time, same place. Bye.